The email came at 4:17 a.m., a cold slice of illumination in the dark. I read it twice to let the words settle. You've been replaced. Just like that, my world unraveled. The name I once called friend, reduced to a hollow bite of betrayal, an act of methodical cruelty, calculated and rehearsed. No spontaneity, only the chill of intent. Shock seeped into my bones, but soon it became a languid detachment. I discovered silence could speak louder than screams. Hurt doesn't yell. It studies, it learns. I felt an eerie calm take over, like I was distantly observing someone else's misfortune. In this new world, I embraced the mundane. I would act normal, a mask slipping over the jagged edges of my reality. I chose not confrontation, but invisibility. Every smile would be a subtle mockery, every nod an act of control. The anger simmered quietly beneath my skin, transforming into a strategic pulse, ready to strike when the time was right. Revenge is not loud. It thrives in shadows. What is unsaid carries the weight of 1,000 calculated blows. And so, I became the ghost that haunted their perfect scene. The trap had been set. I drifted through the days, an actor in a play where the script had soured. I smiled at the familiar faces, nodding in all the right moments. But inside, I was invisible. Each interaction was a performance more terrifying than the last, a delicate balance between simulating warmth while holding the cold blade of betrayal close to my chest. Every laugh was calculated, every gesture a flicker of normalcy devised to conceal the storm brewing behind my eyes. Observing them was my new religion. I studied body language, inflections, and the deceit hidden behind casual grins. Their voices echoed around me, an orchestra of lies I had once danced to effortlessly. Now it was merely noise, the soundtrack to my own solitary preparation. They believed I had swallowed their easy narrative, but little did they know. I was preparing my masterpiece in silence. Triggers veiled as friendly reminders shifted from idle talk to strategies strung together by threads woven from their trust. The tension nestling in my gut transformed into something more manageable, a harnessed energy, a predator waiting for that moment of hesitation. I'd committed not to reckless retaliation, but to a relentless ritual of observation, cataloging every slip-up and infraction. Patience became my most potent weapon. Time was fluid. I watched the rhythm of their lives, their anxious glances and unguarded confessions. My heart softened, not with nostalgia, but with the calculation of possibilities. Anger dissipated into something profound, the clarity of distance. I wasn't wounded. I was awakening, honing my craft like a poet reborn among the ruins of ambition. As I moved through the same spaces where they revered their dominance, I refused to be a ghost of what I once was. Rather, I was the specter that lingered, a shadow almost imperceptible. To them, a casual acquaintance. To me, the architect of their impending unraveling. It was never about vengeance born of passion. It was the softer touch of inevitability, orchestrated from a distance. And each day, I wore my mask with ease, each normal action a step further away from chaos. I studied the silence carefully, attracted to its cold allure, inviting it to guide my thoughts. Every heartbeat synced with waiting. They wouldn't expect the ghost among them to know their secrets, their vulnerabilities, their very souls. I was poised, ready to vanish completely into the corners of their perception. They had replaced me, yes, but they hadn't foreseen that I would become more than they ever imagined. An artful hand-painting, a masterpiece of revenge. Not through a loud clamoring, but through calculated restraint. In their expectations of me, a new story began to unfold, one draped in shadows, silent yet suffocating, and they unknowingly set the trap for themselves. Every whispered conversation clung to the air, echoing in the hollow space behind my ribcage. I took notes while they slept, drifting beyond the membrane of connection they thought still existed. Each interaction was a data point, every facade a mask over truth. I watched, invisible yet acutely aware, a ghost among the living. Small exchanges morphed into tactical maneuvers. I memorized their laughter, the way eyes narrowed at discrepancies, or how voices softened with insincerity. Trust, once an open door, now became a quantified asset, breaking down under scrutiny, like a fragile vase cracked at the base. The lies held no power over me. I distilled them into clusters of information meticulously catalogued. I perfected the art of eavesdropping, each absent-minded inquiry a gentle brush toward my desires. I positioned myself strategically, lurking in shadows, where idle chatter masked intent. As they unveiled vulnerabilities, I absorbed them whole. Every misstep, every confession found a home in my mental ledger, the betrayals stacked like bricks, each one reinforcing the walls of my resolve. In myriad ways, they fell into my trap, unaware of the delicate strings I began to weave around them. I required no elaborate planning, only a steady hand and an unwavering patience. I observed them, my own heartbeat syncing with their rhythms, attuning myself to their cadences. I was a quiet predator in a sea of complacency, reveling in this newfound power that spun silently in the web of expectation. They continued their charade, trusting that I remained a mere spectator in their lives. But I learned the art of moving unseen, my heart no longer a flurry of emotion, but a metronome counting beats of anticipation. Each day, like clockwork, I prepared myself, honing my instincts, sharpening my mind. The storm once brewing inside me now became the precise calm before an inevitable eruption. And so, the desk at my side became a gallery of notes. Each line documented their descent into apathy, a gradual breakdown of the facade we once shared. I was methodical, dissecting their trust like an entomologist categorizing insects, a structured science to my revenge. The thrill of knowing I was drawing closer ignited a fire long stifled beneath the ashes of betrayal. It was a waiting game, and I was no longer just a player. I was the architect of chaos, planting seeds in fertile ground. I would watch and wait, building my arsenal of knowledge quietly, to push them toward the brink without appearing to lift a finger. The trap had not just been set. It was now primed and ready to spring, invisible triggers waiting for their moment. Every laugh shared concealed the tension. Every kind word disguised the dagger I had sharpened in the solitude of my mind. They had replaced me, yet I would elevate myself beyond their expectations, writing a silent script where I danced just out of reach, an intricate ballet of deception and discovery. I was the pulse beneath the veneer, calm, calculated, and alive. The facade stretched across my face like a second skin, each smile, a thread woven into a tapestry of deception. I greeted them in the hall, exchanging pleasantries as if I had not spent sleepless nights constructing my arsenal of observations. They laughed, oblivious to the storm I had conjured patiently from beneath the surface. With every exchange, I learned the value of pretense. Small talk became currency in this world of intent, each hollow laugh ringing like a cash register, calculating my profits in their ignorance. No one suspects the ghost. No one suspects the intentions hidden beneath the veneer of normalcy. I tucked my anger away, reshaping it into something sharper, something patient. They lowered their defenses when they thought I had moved on, and in those fleeting moments of vulnerability, I pressed the edges of their trust like a craftsman testing his tools. Every careless word became a marionette string, easy to tug, guiding them toward the inevitable. I watched them stumble along paths of their making, unaware of the web I was delicately crafting around them. A whisper here, a nod there, and I drew them closer to the precipice. One by one, their missteps piled like bricks, a makeshift monument to their overconfidence. They dropped their guard, not knowing I'd meticulously noted their flaws and imperfections. Manipulation was no longer a dirty word. It became necessary, useful, a skill honed in the shadows. In crowded meetings, I lingered at the periphery, my laughter barely joining theirs. I absorbed their conversations, archiving their secrets. I became a silent witness at the altar of their dialogues, gathering intel, waiting for just the right moment to ignite the fuse I had planted. Every day unfolded like clockwork. I remained the sentinel of their secrets, the keeper of their unguarded moments. My mind, once frantic with confusion, now buzzed with clarity, a finely tuned instrument ready to play the final note. My patience rewarded. The trap was poised to spring, quiet as a heartbeat, inevitable as the dawn. And they wouldn't see it coming. Each misplaced trust, each moment of indulgence, all leading to the soft click of the gears turning in my favor. Behind the mask, I found calm, cold, calculated. I was ready for the world to start crumbling under the weight of their own arrogance while I stood, a silent architect, still waiting. Every movement was an echo, a tremor in the air, and I relished the silence surrounding me. They began to twist under the weight of my careful orchestration. Conversations became strained, laughter forced, all while they remained blissfully unaware of the invisible strings pulling at their every misstep. I watched them navigate their precarious lives, their predictability a soft-throated growl beckoning me closer. It was fascinating how the human mind flaked, how trust, once a sturdy bridge, fractured under the mere suggestion of scrutiny. I saw it in the shifting eyes, the nervous tics, the half-hearted smiles they offered to one another, as if attempting to mask the approaching storm with painted cheer. Their facade of confidence cracked, revealing splits that mirrored their own inner turmoil. The slightest tremor of tension played out before me, a symphony of anxiety in which I held the conductor's baton. They thought they were still in control, yet every day I planted the seeds of doubt. I would watch them unravel piece by piece, until the day they would suddenly realize the fragile tapestry they had woven had begun to fray. Each slip of the tongue, every breath of hesitation, I meticulously recorded in the recesses of my mind. Their patterns emerged, their weaknesses, their fears, a revelation I crafted like an artist's careful stroke upon a canvas. It was not rage driving this expedition, it was precision. I had transcended mere pain, my waiting honed into an art form. I could almost taste the palpable tension slicing through the atmosphere when they gathered, each subtle shift in their stance a reminder of my power. They thought they had relegated me to the background, yet here I was, waiting to dance with their chaos, rain down their gleeful ignorance in a torrent of exposure and consequence. And as I moved among them, cloaked in their trust, the thrill pulsed beneath my skin. The pieces were silently converging, timing my reveal not with the crushing weight of confrontation, but with the softest, most seamless unweaving of their collective story. The longer they held their prattle, the finer the threads became, strands of fiction ready to snap, leaving them adrift. I felt the thrill heighten. Everything was set in motion, and I was the unseen hand calibrating their fate. They believed they could walk on shards without feeling the cuts. They walked on air while I orchestrated a descent into their impending reckoning. The heat of anticipation settled into a cool resolve. I was every bit the ghost, haunting their moments, a specter whose mere presence manipulated their unwitting actions, waiting quietly, patiently, for the inevitable collapse. Control was shifting, and as I set the pieces exactly where I needed them, I felt the thrill rise. Each day was another tick of the clock, another beat in the symphony of my meticulous revenge. I would watch the explosion of their reality from a distance, reveling in the clarity of being the one who weaved their doom. What was once betrayal had become the foundation of my quiet mastery, and all I had to do was wait. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of office chatter fading into a distant drone. Everything felt like clockwork, smooth, predictable. Yet a whisper of uncertainty coiled tight in my gut, an unwelcome flicker. Someone had noticed. It was subtle, a moment during an afternoon meeting. Their eyes turned, jagged corners of suspicion creased in the laugh lines they thought they had buried. I feigned ignorance, plastering on a smile as they exchanged glances, pooling whispers quickly like water around a rock. But underneath, I could feel the current shift. This was the risk of weaving your presence into their tapestry, and now, maybe, just maybe, they had caught a glimpse of the threads unraveling. I replayed the scene in my mind. Their laughter, the crisp words of the betrayer twisting around the doubts I had planted. But it was just a flicker. I wouldn't allow it to bloom. I adjusted my posture, sharpening my focus. Like a blade honed for precision, every instinct honed, every muscle taut. I would not react with panic. Panic was for the weak. No, my adjustments would come quietly, a recalibration under the surface. I would slip back and watch through the veil of their perceived normalcy, slipping through shadows I had learned to love. There was power in patience, an art forged over sleepless nights, cataloging every motion. Let them believe they were the kings of their domain. Let them feel the comfort of their perceived stability. Then came the offhand comment. Casual laughter let slip like oil on water, revealing a second betrayal lurking beneath. A name intertwined with mine, an alignment I hadn't foreseen. I froze, thoughts racing like unwound clockwork. This was no longer merely about the betrayer. There were others involved, shadows deepening around the once familiar faces. Trust? It was gone, like vapor in morning light. Justice called, but its voice had morphed, familiar yet foreign, intimate yet distant. My heart beat steady. I would not lash out. Instead, I adjusted the strategy, recalibrating my plans until they fit like a well-tuned instrument, waiting in silence, ready to strike when they least expected it. As they danced, blissfully unaware, my mind spun the new plot threads. I had to act, but not hastily. Precision. Silence. The resolve that had coursed through my veins over the past year tightened, coalescing into something tangible. A quiet storm brewing within the eye of serenity. They may have seen the flicker, but they had yet to comprehend the depths of darkness I was willing to navigate. I absorbed it all, tucked the notes deeper within my mind, an arsenal of strategies stripped of emotion. With a calm exterior, I re-engaged them, eyes friendly yet calculating. Let them talk, confident in their denial of threat. A masterclass in deception as I smiled, nodded, shifting the subtle ripples of doubt into waves. Everything was a piece of the puzzle. I didn't need to rush. The time would come. I was still standing, waiting in the shadows, a ghost from their past, and soon, a harbinger of consequences they'd never see coming. Patience was my strongest ally, and my heartbeat remained steady, because for each misstep they took, I would learn. And when the moment struck, oh, it would strike just like they wanted. Calm, cold, calculated, and they would not hear my laughter as they fell. I leaned back, the afternoon sun filtering through the office blinds, casting sharp shadows across my notes. Everything felt rehearsed, finely tuned, like a symphony waiting for its conductor. The ground was shifting beneath my feet, yet I remained still, calibrating my next move. Confidence was stirring in the unseen. Anticipation grew like a coiled spring ready to launch. I noticed the glances exchanging across the room, the tightened shoulders, and the ever-so-slight falter in laughter. They sensed it. There was a storm brewing just out of sight. This was the moment when all their pretenses would tip into chaos. I had crafted a landscape where they relied on one another, uninhibited yet teetering on the brink of suspicion. Each murmured conversation surged with quiet urgency, tension threading them together just as I had planned. Then, a soft click echoed in the background. A message sent. A financial report bearing truths I had sculpted under cover of darkness. Misinformation designed to create cracks in their facade. A name slipped into the line, shaking the very foundations of their trust. My heart thudded in rhythm with their fumbled reactions. I was no longer a hidden shadow. I was the architect of their unraveling. They scrambled. Their laughter turned brittle, conversations halting mid-sentence as the realization set in. The betrayer, a figure they didn't expect to falter, scrambled and played the blame game, pointing fingers in defense against the tide of enemy whispers now rising around them. Like a skilled magician, I revealed nothing, merely adjusting my mask, allowing the chaos to unfold. And within that chaos, I watched. There was no triumph in their downfall. Instead, it felt like a meticulous sorting of my internal storm. Their mistake had been to underestimate the ghost at their feast. Here I stood, an observer cloaked in the guise of concern, my facade intact, while they twisted themselves into knots of anxiety, unraveling one smooth thread at a time. I moved through the scene, maintaining an air of disinterested bafflement. The betrayer looked my way, pleading with frantic eyes, unknowingly begging to be rescued from a trap I had set. But I was no savior. I had no intentions of averting their disaster. I offered a smile laced with feigned sympathy, even as I thrived on their growing dread. As the conversation skewed against them, I recognized the rush of adrenaline surging through my veins. Calm, dangerous, and utterly focused. Everything I had meticulously catalogued for a year was now falling into place, enveloping me in a cloak of mastery over chaos. I had become a maestro of their reckoning, pulling the strings with the softest of touches. Time marched on, each second a heartbeat in my plan, calibrated to perfection. Their fate was sealed, and all I had to do was stand aside and let the trap spring, watching it unfold with the precision of clockwork. There was no joy in it, only a cool satisfaction, like the muted hum of a symphony reaching its crescendo. For the first time since that fateful email in the dead of night, I was free. I no longer needed to manifest emotion. I had forged something far stronger: control. I attuned my senses to the whispers of dread cloaking them, a silent audience relishing the inevitable. They could not reclaim what was already lost, nor could they hope to chart a new path devoid of my influence. As I strolled back to my desk, the air around me thick with their confusion, I knew the silence I had cultivated had become my mightiest weapon. Revenge isn't a storm, it's a meticulous march of inevitability, a dance where every step leads them closer to their own wreckage. And there I remained, poised, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the moment when my silent symphony would climax. I wasn't just present. I was the very pulse they never felt, the architect of their demise as every note struck true. Their laughter fractured around me like glass, each shard glimmering with the weight of secrets. I observed from my corner with a practiced ease, a ghost wagging fingers in the back of my mind, eager for the storm. They darted glances my way, wearing the facade of control, though the cracks were deepening, like thin ice starting to break. The very air felt electric, charged with the thrill of my invisible influence. I was the predator circling. Today, their act began to unravel, thin smiles giving way to an undercurrent of anxiety. They still believed I was the same, the forgotten bystander. Yet I held the power. My presence was a subtle reminder of the betrayal they thought they had buried, the specter lingering behind their defenses. "Have you seen the reports?" whispered one, barely audible amidst their clinking glasses. I felt the anticipation coil within me, ready to strike. The very mention of financial details ignited buried tensions. The bait was laid. With my own calculated smile, I leaned into the atmosphere they cultivated, feigning interest while edgewise, the tension thickened. As I observed them navigate through half-finished thoughts and stilted laughter, the storm I had set in motion grew closer. One would lash out soon, a spark flaring before the flames struck. Confidence had always been their crutch, and now it was turning brittle. I watched the betrayer, the one who cast me aside. I could practically taste the panic that danced at the back of their throat. They would blame everyone but themselves, each wronged look, every miscommunication setting the stage for an explosion. Sipping my drink, I felt triumphant in my silence. They were oblivious to the trap tightening around their ankles, a simple string pulled here, a careless word slipped there. All I needed to do was remain poised, patient, and offer the smallest nudge, like the whisper of a gale heralding a downpour. "Don't worry, it'll blow over," I heard someone reassure with a forced laugh. But the unease thickened as whispers turned to silences, eyes darting like pulse points, each one a heartbeat closer to their demise. I leaned in, a picture of concern masked in pretense as I played my part, stringing their hope even tighter around the bait I had laid. As cluttered discussions turned into frantic reckoning, I felt the anticipation coil tighter yet, adrenaline coursing through my veins. That split second of realization hung in the air, unspoken panic reflecting in their eyes. I was the silent architect of this chaos, withdrawing further into the shadows as I savored the unfolding chaos. Soon, they would scream. Soon, they would burn down their own defenses. Watching someone drown in their own fire was tasteless. All I needed was to toss in that one whisper, a suggestion, a fleeting doubt, to spark the flames. And as their fragile walls began to fold in, I felt the final thread tightening around their throats. Patience, I reminded myself, was my ally. The storm was at my fingertips, ready to break free. I was the calm before it crashed down, feathers ruffled under the surface but smiling, still. How dangerous it felt, crouched in the eye of this countercurrent. Soon, I would be wrapped up in their conflagration, my purpose realized. Nothing louder than a whisper, yet it would become an echo that shattered everything they believed they controlled. I was ready to let them burn. All it took was that one last hoplite urging, a simple push into their oblivion. Patience, calm, calculated, a predator never rushed, for they know their prey is already ensnared. When the moment arrived, I would linger, a specter watching the collapse. They believed I held no power. They were woefully mistaken. It was almost time. A silent orchestra played in my mind, each pulse, each heartbeat a note in the impending symphony of their downfall. I felt it all around me, the air thick with an electric tension that only I could perceive. Stepping deeper into the shadows, I waited as the final pieces of my trap clicked into place. Today was different. Today they would unravel. I watched them huddled together, their laughter strained, forced like a poorly played note. The betrayer was among them, the very architect of my past misfortune, wearing a mask of nonchalance while their eyes darted with unyielding fear. "Have you seen the reports?" The whisper traveled through the air like a harbinger of chaos. I savored it, knowing the truth hung just out of reach, waiting to shatter their fragile confidence. They couldn't see the threads weaving tighter around them. All they knew was the discord creeping into their cadence, one note at a time. I leaned against the wall, the cool surface grounding me, reminding me that I was the stillness before the storm. This was not about bombast. It was an art form, precision wielded with quiet deliberation. They framed their questions and concerns, the betrayer lowering its guard even further, stepping right into my sights. With simmering intent, I allowed nothing but a phantom smile to flicker across my lips, masking the orchestrator within. They would not suspect their ghost kept vigilant, manipulating their every breath, every fleeting doubt. The armor of their trust had begun to rust, peeling back inch by inch, and I was their silent executioner, hiding in plain sight. Then, the first spark ignited. An angered voice rose, slicing through the tension. The betrayer blamed someone else, an ally turned enemy. Instantly, fingers pointed, taxes misfiled, accountability spiraled out of control. Who would take the fall when the tide of anger surged? I felt it. The measured satisfaction coursed through me, a tranquil tide lapping against the shore of my resolve. The trap was closing, invisible and inescapable. Like a sniper holding their breath, I remained steady, watching as my carefully placed seeds of doubt flowered into accusations. They began lashing out. Friends turned foes. Every fraying thread of their tapestry spiraled into disarray, yet here I was, the faceless ghost watching from the edges, the architect of their own demise. The satisfaction was cold, focused, a pulse like a heartbeat, a final breath before the crack of thunder. All I had to do was disappear again. The satisfaction wouldn't come in applause. It would come in the chill of their realization. Each second was another heartbeat, yet none of them knew they were being counted down. I was the hand pushing the pieces toward an inevitable collapse, penning a final act in a play they believed I had left. As I retreated into the periphery, the chaos unfolded, a crucible of their arrogance, exposing them layer by layer, like an artist unveiling their work. I could afford to linger, a specter bearing witness to the consequences of betrayal. It was time, the reckoning orchestrated in silence, a justice too quiet to scream. Finally, it was complete. I had prepped them, trained them for this moment without them ever knowing my hand guided every misstep. I faded away, just another flicker in their fraying narrative, leaving my ghostly mark, and waited. Patience, after all, was my truest art. The final act unfolded in the dim light of uncertainty, shadows dancing as if unsure of their place. The betrayer stood at the center of it all, a hollow smile attempting to mask the dread swirling just beneath the surface. Each laugh from the crowd rang brittle, like thin ice cracking underfoot, and I savored the chaos playing out in subdued whispers. "Did you see those reports?" I heard one of them croak, a light tremor in their voice. The bait wafted through the air, and I leaned in slightly, my expression devoid of intent, a ghost in this theater of deception. I watched as panic laced through their laughter, threads of tension weaving tighter around their throats. They danced on a precipice, oblivious to the trap I had set. The echoes of their casual interactions morphed into frantic exchanges, bludgeoning one another with accusations. The betrayer pointed wildly, deflecting blame like a jittery marionette, unaware that every twitch and tremor only tightened the metaphorical noose I had crafted, with fluid precision over the past year. I didn't need to intervene. They were dismantling themselves beautifully. I remained a figure among them, hidden behind laughter, my silence a weapon sharper than any blade. With every barbed remark they hurled, the final threads of their alliance frayed. My heart beat steadily. I felt no joy, only an enveloping calm, as though each glance they cast toward me filled the air with tension I had orchestrated. Then came the moment. The betrayer's voice cracked under the weight of their own failures. "It wasn't me," they shouted, their eagerness to deny pouring forth like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Their trust eroded. Allies hesitated, unsure of the battle lines forming in their desperate minds. I felt a dull thrill wash over me, a cool wave of satisfaction tinged with something more profound: mastery. In the suffocating silence following that outburst, their gazes shifted, darting aimlessly, searching for whom to blame. But they wouldn't find me. I had become the invisible architect of this decay, leaving only the chilling scent of betrayal in my wake. The fraying edges of their connections began to unravel completely, revealing the rotting core I had meticulously buried beneath layers of deceit. And then, amidst the crumbling facade of their unity, I leaned against the wall, the weight of their chaos swirling freely around me. An accidental smile played on my lips, hidden but palpable, a wildflower growing through concrete. They were drowning without knowing the tides had shifted, and I was the steady anchor in an ocean of their confusion. The betrayer made their desperate call, fumbling for connection, seeking a lifeline amidst the tides of accusation washing over them. My gaze remained fixed on the ground, my phone silent, still intertwined in the strings of my resolve. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to. They didn't deserve my words. In that silence, I felt the weight of unresolved tension ease, replaced by something more than satisfaction, an acceptance of the stillness that would follow. "Help me," they pleaded silently, 1,000 unspoken words hanging between us. But I was no savior. I was simply the ghost of their past, observing their demise from the shadows, a reminder of the grievous error they had made. And in that moment, I knew my silence would echo in their reality, the last gasp of breath escaping from the lungs of their credibility. The consequence wasn't keenly violent. It was intimate. Each job lost, each ally turned against them. Each smile soured by bitterness, calcifying their once vibrant lives into a muted tapestry of regret. The threads of their lives disentangled bit by bit, until all that remained was a quiet acknowledgement of the darkness they had invited. A soft crack echoed, the sound of glass breaking under the pressure of too many unmet expectations. They adorned their chaos like a cloak, delusion as their only shield against the oncoming storm. Yet I was content to linger in the shadows, watching their world collapse. Today was a reckoning, and it felt like none. My heart swelled with an unknowable sense of peace. What they had crafted, I had unwoven, not through anger, but gentle restraint. Not through noise, but stillness, like a predator lurking, watching their desperation manifest. I stood poised, wrapped in the silence that followed the collapse, greeting my victory not with triumph, but acceptance. No celebration, just the deep breath of the universe recalibrating. Checkmate without witnesses, the final scene played out. A life ruined, a reputation decayed, while I remained the unseen hand, the ghost that haunted their memory. As they whispered into the void, desperately grasping at the remnants of who they once were, I walked away, the sound of their downfall fading behind me like the final notes of a symphony, leaving only silence in its wake. The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the pavement as I walked past the place where it all began. A familiar dread lingered in the air, rich with memories and betrayal, but I felt none of it now. I was lighter, unburdened, stepping through the aftermath of a year spent in the shadows, designing my own artistry of revenge. They gathered in clusters, old friends, like trapped birds unable to see the open sky. I caught a glimpse of the betrayer, the architect of my unmooring, their eyes darting restlessly. I could almost hear the questions spiraling in their minds, a frantic search for salvation amid the wreckage. But I was not their savior. No, I was merely an observer, cloaked in anonymity, my presence more potent than their whispers. We locked eyes for a brief moment, and the world folded into silence. No words were necessary. We both understood the gravity of what had transpired. The unspoken acknowledgement hung heavy between us, yet there was no warmth, only the sharp chill of inevitability. I offered a smile, not of triumph but of resolution, a quiet acceptance of fate. They were no longer my concern. With each step, the weight of that fateful email that had set this entire cycle into motion faded further into the recesses of my mind. You've been replaced. The casual malice that had unraveled my reality turned numb, lost somewhere among the layers of temporary confusion I had navigated. Now I felt nothing. No anger, no hunger for applause. Just a clear path stretching before me, an open road unmarred by their chaos. For the first time in a year, I slept without checking the locks, leaving my heart open to the simple calmness of solitude. The silence that crept in at dusk was a balm. Each nightfall wrapped me in the knowledge that my mission was complete. I reveled in the tranquility of knowing they were still unraveling, caught in the tendrils of their own uncertainty while I moved on. Distance turned to peace, devoid of the fireworks they might have expected. It was meticulous, calculated. My revenge had been a performance more profound than they could have anticipated. The facade was stripped away, leaving behind only the raw essence of what came next, my liberation. Amidst their disarray, I had crafted my sanctuary, a sanctuary growing stronger with every passing moment that took me further from the remnants of their reign. I drew in a deep breath, allowing the coolness of the air to fill my lungs, and continued walking, feeling the rhythm of my heartbeat steady against the background of distant noise. I had become the ghost they never saw coming. Stepping forward, I allowed the finality of it all to settle within me, a reminder that I had emerged from the depths of that storm intact. I was no longer the echo of their choices. Now, I was the architect of my own existence, unshackled and unrepentant. With every footfall fading into the distance, the memory of our shared past dissolved like dust in the wind. I still carried the scars of betrayal, but they were neither raw nor tender anymore. They had transformed into a map leading me away from their darkness and toward my own light. In the silence that enveloped me, I felt the weight of closure, crystalline and exact. There was no courtroom for my reckoning, no applause for my victory, only the soft certainty of having stepped into a new chapter. This was freedom, not something given, but something taken from the ashes of what they had tried to build at my expense. No, it wasn't about revenge. It was about survival, about rising from the depths and walking away as the sun dipped below the horizon. I stopped for a moment, gazing back, letting the past settle behind me, knowing my story continued down this empty road. And for all my waiting, the trap I had set had released me instead.